You're listening to The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, and co-host, Keelan Harvey on Alternative Talk AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage experts, Tina Mitchell and Keelan Harvey.
You are listening to The Money Hour on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, May 15th show. You can also listen to our podcast, Facebook premiere show, or on our show YouTube channel. I am your host, Tina Mitchell.
And I'm your co-host, Keelan Harvey.
We bring into studio each week the best of the best experts in our local market on everything regarding your money. We are here to help you in today's economy. Now in studio, we have Staci Bartley of Love Shack Live. Marriage is dead. It's time to really discover how to create love for a lifetime right here on 1150 AM KKNW. Staci, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's going to be a little bit different for you being on the other side of the show because you're a host as well.
Yes, absolutely. And it is fun. It's always fun to be on the backside watching how other people do their shows, right? It's a great experience here. So
I know. I love it. Well, let me share a little bit about Staci. Staci has a CHT hypnotherapy, certified divorce mediator, certified strategic intervention coach, graduate of energy and intuitive science, lifelong study of psychology, human sexuality, and universal principles. She is a speaker and a workshop facilitator for medical and mental health professionals, as well as contributes to 2 wellness programs for Fortune 500 companies.
Oh, wow. That's making me blush.
Yeah, it's a pretty awesome bio, that's for sure.
I think you could boil that all down and just say, the reality is I just love human beings, and I've become fascinated with how they work, how they tick, right? And that's what brings me to what it is I do. I
love that. Keelan, you want to start out with our first question?
Yeah, after I get myself off of mute. I do it once a show, maybe at least. But your title, Marriage is Dead. Why do you say that marriage is dead, Staci? And are you anti-marriage? Does that mean? Or
yes, I know that's the first thing. I mean, like the book, this is the title of the book that you're referring to. Just for your listeners, I want them to know that that's not necessarily a placard that I have on my office, but it is a book that's going to be released here in September 2021. It's a book that I've been writing for the last 4 years. And the reason why I chose the title that I did is because, we tend to cling to this idea of marriage to give us some safety and some guarantees when it comes to the relationships in our lives, right? If we can get to the altar, if we can find that special someone that we say I do with, it's kind of like in our mentalities, we go, check, okay, handled. Let's get back to life. Let's go back to what it was we were doing, people. Okay, I got that handled. See, do you see my lovely, handsome partner, my lovely bride? And we use the marriage, or what I would call obligation, as a thing to kind of help us feel safe in the relationship journey. And unfortunately, I say marriage is dead, not because I'm anti-marriage whatsoever. I'm married. I have been for 10, almost 11 years now. I did go through a phase in my own relationship life where I was very anti-marriage. Like I was that girl who was the independent, nobody's going to tell me what to do, I'm going to do it my way kind of girl. And through my journey, I realize, even the clients that I've worked with for the last 5 years, it's obligation that marriage brings into our relationships that really cripples us. It's still not a way that we create love for a lifetime. It's just something that we do that kind of makes us feel better about what it is we want and where it is we want to go in our relationships with others.
Yeah. Well, and I believe if you have a great marriage, it does enhance your quality of life. But like you say, if you're just checking it off the box and it's not a great marriage, that great relationship, it's not going to serve you and you're going to have a lower quality of life, So why do so many people struggle with relationships, Staci?
I think because we don't study them like we do other things in our lives. It's interesting. Relationships kind of have this container where we kind of set them off and they don't apply to the other principles and laws that we would apply to our lives. For example, I just ask yourself, how much time do you spend studying, say, relationships? How many skills have you actually intentionally learned, right? What do you know about relationships really that wasn't given to you by your parents? And yet we would go out and we would learn how to drive a car, and we would go through the reading of how to drive a car, and we would get in that car, more importantly, and we would start driving it. And notice those two things are very different. Reading about how to drive a car and actually driving a car are very, very different experiences. Right? Just as love is. And we have a lot of stories that are passed down from generation to generation, from our families, from our culture, from our religion. And those stories are great. They're inspiring. There are things that we all want to achieve and have as a part of our life, but they're still not teaching us how to do that thing we call relationships. And yet the relationship journey is very much like those other journeys. If I want to get good at baking a casserole, I'm going to have to probably flub up a few in order to get it right. Or baking, in my particular case, I'm a horrible baker. Like I can't.
Hopefully we don't flub up a few marriages before we get it right.
But you're going to.
Yes.
You're going to. And here's the thing about marriage as well. When do we start counting our practice sessions? Do we start counting them in the schoolyard? Do we count them in junior high when we have our first kiss? Do we only count the times that we had sex, or do we only count the times that we are married? And I want you to see that through the progression of our human experience, we are learning and getting better at relationships as we go, just like everything else. And the tragedy that I see, and why I say marriage is dead, is because we make up some horrible, crippling stories when things don't go the way that we were taught they were supposed to go in the relationship journey. And that's where I believe the tragedy is. We need to be able to learn from our experiences in love, just like we do from our experiences in life. And yet we start making up a horrible tragedy about all men are this, all women are this. I'm not lovable. They're not lovable. I didn't find the right person. I'm a horrible person. See, I can't get this right. And none of that is true. You're going to get better as you go. And unfortunately, what's happening, especially in this environment right now today, is that we're making up a story where I'm not going to love ever again. I'm not going to allow myself to express or give my heart or say how I really feel or get all in. And so just like if I were going to drive a car, if I've got one foot in and one foot out, then I'm going to probably have a half-baked result, aren't I?
Just like anything in life. That's great advice. Have you always been this good at this whole relationship thing, Staci?
No, in fact, my relationship history is a major disaster. And I think that's what makes me so good at speaking to it, because I'm not speaking at it from theory or a book, a textbook. Yes, I have the credentials. I can learn, I can read. I've got the wonderful degrees, but big deal, right? It's kind of like the learning versus the implementation. Those two things need to go hand in hand as human beings. And we all want relationship. In fact, we need relationship. I always say, if you want to put your personal growth on steroids, just go ahead and get into a relationship, because it's going to take care of everything. Like it's going to bring up everything that is stopping you, that you're afraid of, that you're insecure about, all the self-doubt that you have.
All about you. It's about you and the relationship, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Staci, what about areas of life that create the greatest challenges to intimate relationships?
Yeah, the intimate relationship part of our lives, I want you to view as just an extension of our day-to-day lives. When it comes to our intimate lives, what ends up happening is if we have a difficult time sharing what I need, what works for me, what I want, what I desire in my daytime life, as I like to say, then it's going to be a disaster in my intimate life, because I'm just going deeper into myself. And I want you to understand that when it comes to our intimate lives, there's a place where we cross where it's all about pretend. It's all about imagination in my intimate life. I mean, there is nothing non-erotic about living in reality. In fact, we're trying to get away from that, aren't we, when we cross? And we want to just, hey, sweep me off my feet. Let's pretend like you're this and I'm that. Let's pretend like we can do this. Let's try that and see how it goes. But if I don't have the ability to talk about what it is I want, and I don't have the ability to have those conversations, then my sex life is probably going to be flat, just like my relationship in the daytime is going to be somewhat flat. Does that make sense? Yes.
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense.
Absolutely makes sense. We're down to 1 minute, Staci. And before I go, I know it's quick. When we're having fun, before we go, what is the biggest problem that you feel like we all face when it comes to relationships?
Self-doubt. We doubt ourselves. We doubt who we are. We don't know where to go for our answers. We think that pleasing the other person is the key. And it's not. That's what we've been taught. It's no fault of our own. But until we really get good at knowing what makes me tick, how in the world am I going to have the ability to translate my own thoughts, feelings, and emotions and teach somebody else how to love me best? I won't. And that idea of love and relationship will continue to elude me.
Yeah, such a beautiful conversation. We need to get you back in studio definitely for more than just a segment, because to go in deeper on this, because anything in life, especially your relationships, you have to be your best self so you can be best for others. You have to love yourself, know how to bring your best self out in your relationships, and then be authentic to yourself and who you are. And then that will attract the relationship that is right for you. So Staci, what an important thing that you're doing in the world, and just happy to have you here on our show. And we need to get you back in. We'll get you in for the entire show and have a more in-depth conversation with you.
Sounds great. Look forward to it. And thank you so much for having me and allowing me to share. It's a pleasure.